This is the Astrology and Tarot Show with Jessica Adams.
Thanks, Shane. Here is your astrology, incorporating your tarot for the week of Monday, April 14. The best place to listen is at the Astrology and Tarot Show on Substack at substack.com, because we give you timestamps for every sign, and you can also pick up your daily horoscope there. First up, if you have Taurus factors in your birth chart, well, from April 19, it's all about the finance, the property, the business, and the valuables, with a green light near the 27th of April. This green light is really about a revolution for you. This is going to be quite a radical change, but it will set you free. Now, for those of you asking me on Substack, yes, I did predict the share market crisis, and it was in a feature called How Wall Street Works, back on September 17 last year. If you missed it, it's still up there. And I wrote that March through June next year looks unpredictable, erratic, tumultuous. Lightning bolts and electrical storms may actually appear over the New York sky to press home the point that Uranus in Taurus is in charge. Well, according to NBC last week, strong storms pummeled the NYC area with wild wind, and that's exactly what's happening on Wall Street. Now, your tarot this week. You can decode your card on my website. Aries, the Queen of Pentacles. Taurus, the Seven of Cups. Gemini, the Knight of Wands. Cancer, the Sun. Leo, the Queen of Wands. Virgo, the Two of Pentacles. Libra, the Eight of Cups. Scorpio, Temperance. Sagittarius, the Chariot. Capricorn, the Four of Wands. Aquarius, the Empress. And Pisces, the Knight of Pentacles. Aries. Well, as you go into Taurus financial season, which extends to May 2025, the price that you're about to pay for having more space and more freedom financially, or in terms of the house or the apartment, may actually be priceless. In other words, you can't put a number on it, but you are prepared to pay it. That's the reality. You'll be pleased to know that this cycle ends in July. It's completely gone by 2026. So this quite unpredictable time that you've been having since 2018 is slowly drawing to a close. But it's in the nature of the beast that until you get to July, you're still going to have some upheaval. So your life budget this week could be reworked. You could be thinking about more room to move, as the old patterns with the business, your house or apartment, or your bank account, even the contents of your home, have been chopping and changing since the year 2018 when this cycle began. And the year 2020 was a big one for obvious reasons. Well, this week is still about being flexible, adapting, adjusting, and being ready to meet change with change. I would say that even if there wasn't a world trade war on. But it does have a trickle-down effect on you. And for some Aries people, it's quite a direct impact, depending on the job that you do. If you have anything in Taurus in your birth chart, keep on reminding yourself how free you are, because that will make everything more manageable for you. In fact, you don't get the freedom and you don't get the independence without the breaking up of old patterns. And that's what's been happening to you for years. This year is a big humdinger in terms of that, because we have so much action going through Taurus, not just now until July, but also at the end of the year. But I'll talk a bit more about that once we get after July, August to you. And Aries like you, Sarah Jessica Parker, just put her apartment on the market. So it could be on that level you want to sell. It may be on another level that you just want to do things differently. But meeting change with change is a very good idea. Taurus, well, there's nothing and nobody so challenging professionally or academically or with your unpaid role that you can't do something about it this week. You can educate yourself about your own industry, your profession, which has transformed so much in 2023, 2024, or this may be about being a carer or a volunteer or being a student. This Pluto cycle takes 20 years to work through your life, and so you're in it for the long haul. And it will completely transform your ideas about success. You've already done a bit of that over the last 2 years. This week is about figuring out, do I need to change the strategy from last year and this year so far? Because you likely had to come up with something pretty quickly. The intense situations that you faced in 2023 and 2024, and perhaps early 2025, allowed you to think short term where actually long term was a better bet because you are in this for the long haul. And this week is about looking at the strategies and tactics that you've been using with questions about who or what is top dog, who or what has the power and the control. So if you're ex-British PM Tony Blair, who's a Taurus like you, you'll now be thinking it's your role to advise the current PM on what to do about the US tariffs. Well, is it? Or is there a bigger question here about the pecking order or the hierarchy? That's something typical of this cycle. And wherever you are in the grand scheme of things, you are going to have to look at this as a game of chess because all the pieces are now being moved around on the board. And as I've said, you have to figure out your next move. Gemini. Well, you may be about to take a new job. As this Pisces weather ends, it finishes in two stages, having started in late March, it ends in late May. Otherwise, there may be a new project or a different spin on the same career path. This also applies to unpaid work or university. This is really like writing a book and having different chapters that you sign off on. And you've signed off on one, and another one this week is being written towards a close. Over the next few weeks, you'll see that. It's important to have as many facts as you can possibly gather, not just about your employers or your staff, but also about the state of your business, your profession, or your academic field. And of course, this is about unpaid work like volunteering or caring. Again, you need to figure out where the land lies. This week is about research then, but it helps you get towards the end of May with a sense that you've covered all your bases because you can't just dive into this sort of ending. You really have to sign off on it with full knowledge. And that comes from just hitting the books, hitting the internet, or talking to people who know what they're talking about. If you are, for example, waiting for the end of a season or the end of a project, that wouldn't be totally surprising. But what you need to do is pace yourself, Gemini, because your horoscope says it's not quite time yet. That will come in the final week of May when Saturn is out of Pisces. So if you're a Gemini like Nicole Kidman, you might be waiting for May 21, which is the premiere of her new series of Perfect Strangers Season 2. So that date's obviously in her diary. You might also have a May date in your diary, but even if you don't, remember that this week is a bit of a bridge towards the real action, which comes later. Cancer. Well, let's talk about Uranus in your zone of friendship until July. It's also the zone of the group. This may be Twitter X or a political party or a band or a football team. This is also about your ally, your pals, and your social circle. You have to ask yourself, who's in my tribe? Because it changes all the time on this cycle. Uranus in Taurus in your 11th house is there. And in your natal chart, you have Pluto in Aquarius in your 11th house. So it's like hearing the same song played from two different channels. This week is about surprising yourself by maybe doing one of the last things you ever expected that you would be doing. Of course, Elon Musk is a Cancerian like you, born June 28. So if you took the Republican Party as an example of his tribe and Donald as an example of his friend, you can see just how chopping and changing is the theme of the week. These cycles are basically about rejection dance, so rejecting and being rejected by friends and the group, and that way lies freedom. In fact, you've been doing this since 2018. Uranus is about hearing the word no and also saying no as well. And every time that happens, more independence comes in, more genuine freedom. This week is really about understanding where you're at, as it may be a different person or a different group since 2018, but the principle is the same. You have to figure out how much space you've got and how restricted you are. Definitely look at how much you might be restricting others as well. That's a very important question. And stepping back from your involvement with a group or even a tribe or multiple tribes is very handy because you get to see where maybe the broken links are or the weak links in the situation. That way, change comes organically and naturally. It doesn't come as a huge shock, which can also happen with Uranus in Taurus. This week is about getting the measure of that and also being honest with yourself about how free you feel with particular people or how free you don't feel. and your own situation in terms of giving them space. From that comes some really useful answers. Leo, you can expect a long reality check with your accountant, or just between you and the budget and a calculator, or even you and an investor this week. You are signing off from Neptune in Pisces, which left you in the final week of March, and you're crossing the bridge to the end of Saturn in Pisces at the end of May. And Pisces in your chart rules joint finance and property, business, valuables, charity. Late March was step 1, late May is step 2. Just make sure that the economic world you're left with is one that you can live with long term. You actually have a third cycle as well, and that's the North Node in Pisces. So this is a really unusual year for your accounting, your tax, the money that ties you up with your extended family or a partner. And this week tells you that you may even be affected by the global trade war that is unfolding. Even just having a pension or a superannuation account can pull you into that. What's happening now is a bit of timing, a bit of jet lag, if you like, because you're not quite over the bridge yet to the next big change. And it would be a mistake to think that you know everything at the moment, because you just don't. You can't do it really until the final week of May when Saturn moves on. But something that you can do that might be useful is look at the numbers as they were 18 or 19 years ago. There is some karma there, whether you are owed from that time or whether you owe other people. It will be expressed through what happens to you with the money, the house, the business, or the apartment this year. And just bearing that in mind will help you make more sense of what's going on this week. Virgo. Well, you can see clearly now the rain has gone with a particular person. This might be about your marriage. It might be about a close relationship or your professional partnership. But this sector of your horoscope, ruled by Pisces, is also about the duel or the contest or the conflict as much as it is about the pair of you. And sometimes it happens all at the same time. So you're very concerned with your wife, for example, but you're also in court against somebody else. However it's manifesting for you, and your personal birth chart will show you in detail, it's a really big time for you to sort out the scales and the way that the scales have to be balanced in your life. The fog has definitely lifted. It lifted from the final week of March. Neptune left Pisces, and muddling through and never being entirely sure is now rapidly looking like a thing of the past. You have to get real because things just got very real out there. Yet it wouldn't be until the final week of May that Saturn is out of Pisces that you can actually say a waiting game or a test of patience is over. This is going to seem as if it never ends, but it will end with all the laws of astrology on your side from the final week of May. And the timing here for the rest of the year is really about karma. This is about karma from 18 or 19 years before, when you were involved in a particular chapter with a duet or a duel in your life. It may have been a marriage, it may have been a divorce, but your horoscope says that you need to get closure from that. There has never really been any karmic settlement since that first nodal cycle took place. So the cycle that you're in now is very much about going round in circles and repeating the same things all the time until you do reach a point where you can say, well, that's settled. You feel that you can shut the book on it. Going back 18 or 19 years this week could be really useful for you. Libra. Uranus in Taurus is asking you to forget about now or then financially and head straight for the future with the house, the business, the apartment, the bank, the shares, and the rest of it. Uranus in Taurus is always about the future, calling to the present, and it can feel as if you're being jolted. It can feel as if you are watching a concertina move too quickly. It can feel like an escalator that you're not completely across. All of that's pretty typical of this cycle. And of course, we're seeing it on world share markets because the whole world is having this transit in its own finance zone. Even if you live in New Zealand, you could be affected by what's happening in New York. So this week is really about understanding wiggle room. Understanding that you need to give yourself space and room to move is really important. The more the ties that bind restrict you, the more likely you are to feel uncomfortable, because what's happening is a typical Uranus and Taurus cycle when there are no known factors. It is the predictably unpredictable. So, understanding that you need to zigzag when everything else and everybody else is also zigzagging is a really good start. And you've done this before. You've been doing it since 2018 on and off when you had to. But what's different about this week is that you have the luxury of knowing you have until July to get this sorted out, because that's the end of the cycle, at least for the first part of it. So you've got a few weeks here to get things into a space where you can meet change with change, because you're going to have to. Uranus in Taurus is moving through your eighth house, which is all about our money, our property, often a mortgage, sometimes an inheritance. And there are variations on the theme, but it's usually to do with the family or with a marriage. It's usually personal, however that pans out for you. Understanding that you are free to change is also very important. There's no rule that says you have to do what you were doing back in 2017 the same way. If anything, you haven't come this far without being free to experiment. So that's what this week is all about for you. Scorpio, you have until June 2025 to make or save money at historic levels with Jupiter in Gemini. This is a 12-year cycle, and it is always about growth, expansion, solutions, opportunities, and definitely the idea of growing from an acorn. From small acorns, mighty oaks do grow. Hopefully, you have already been doing a bit of life gardening since last year, because Jupiter has been there that long. But this week makes it a bit more obvious to you. If you have your sun in Scorpio from 25 through 29 degrees, then it's personal, and your birth chart will show you that. Every time you look at the financial news on the web, there's something else. It changes every time that we look at it these days because of the cycle that the whole world's in, which I've been talking a bit about in this podcast. Until July 2025, when finally Jupiter changes signs, fresh advances in technology or even in the corporations which run finance could change your world, and you will get a hint of that this week. Jupiter goes in June. By July, it's well and truly gone because Uranus is coming in. And for you, that is quite a revolutionary few years that starts probably with a sudden lightning storm or a moment of truth as you go into August. Understanding the way that things are moving out there for you with houses and apartments, with the business, financial, or share situation, even with something as basic as eBay or trading at the local church fete or jumble sale, could enlighten you on the level that you need to be enlightened. So it's a really good time for you to look around and see the way things are moving out there, and to get yourself into a position where you are able to snap up a big answer or a big opportunity not possible in 12 years that will come your way between here and June. Sagittarius, you spent 2011 to 2024 wading around in the property market or renting, looking for sight lines in the building industry, muddling along with mortgage interest rates, or looking for dry land with tenancy laws, watching the boundaries at home, maybe with a landlady or a family member, and so on. Well, that's well and truly over with. It may take time for you to adjust to that because you lived with it for so long. But the end of March ended the cycle, and it's no longer necessary to play guessing games and to try and constantly catch up with the ever-changing horizon with the house or apartment situation, with the family or with the household. What you're doing now is bridging the gap between then and the future, because from the final week of May, you also hit a milestone. Saturn will also be gone from this area of your chart. And for the first time in a very long time, you no longer have to wait. The waiting game, whatever it is well and truly over from the final week of May, and that could already be appearing in your diary or your calendar, Sagittarius. This applies if you own, rent, or even have real estate. It applies if you're renovating or repairing. It applies if you live alone or you live with flatmates, a roommate, a partner, or the family. What you're seeing here looks like you're going to have to make some rules, have some definitions for a change, some proper numbers maybe, or some proper facts in the story, and therefore deal with people who want to structure your life as well. So this may be an accountant who wants you to get organised, or it may be somebody who's now very determined to make sure that everything's shipshape after a long period of time when you were all at sea. Sometimes, depending on your personal birth chart, if you have anything in Cancer, for example, it will be really quite momentous. And if you do have Cancer factors, Jupiter in Cancer from June this year will give you the most incredible opportunity to sort everything out and fix it the way that you want to fix it. Capricorn. Let's look at the world of babies and children, teenagers and Generation Z when discussing the freedom that you do or do not have in your life. This covers obvious areas like any sons and daughters, but also includes young relatives, godchildren, professional or social involvements with young people, and issues like adoption, child custody, nannies, and so on. Dating single mums is an example of this cycle. Uranus in Taurus in the fifth house, and so is dating a divorced dad or going into IVF treatment. Well, you're now almost at the end of this cycle, but you are moving into a fairly intense phase which runs across May. So within 3 months, the last thing that you expected may be the first thing that happens. Understanding that this week is pretty helpful because you don't want to lock anything in or tie yourself down to absolutely knowing that X, Y, or Z is the outcome, because it may not be. Uranus in Taurus has a reputation for pulling the rug and for delivering the last thing that anybody expected. It is associated with electrical storms. It can come from nowhere, and everything changes in the blink of an eye. So this week is really about appreciating how much that has already happened to you, because it's been happening to you ever since 2018 when this cycle began. If you think about 2020 and COVID-19 and the impact that it had on your private life, your marriage, your relationships, your children, for example, you get a fair taste of the way that this planetary cycle moves. It's not negative or positive. It's just the last thing that you expect to happen. And that's why getting yourself into a flexible position is a very good idea. If you are banking on something or somebody being permanent forever and the rest of it, you may want to think twice, because between here and July, all sorts of changes are in the pipeline. The reward that you get for meeting change with change is freedom. Independence Day is coming. Aquarius. This wonderful new Jupiter cycle from June, with Jupiter in Cancer in your sixth house, affects your job, your unpaid work, your housework, and your study. It affects your mental and physical health, which cannot be separated from your fitness to serve or your fitness to work. They're all much of a muchness. Clues to improvement this week will point you in the right direction for solutions and opportunities later on. So it may be a breakthrough in the pharmaceutical industry that addresses something that you're living with, or it may be a twist in the story at work, which means you can see a promotion up ahead or a beneficial reshuffle. Your personal chart will tell you the personal story. If you have anything in Virgo, have a look at that, because you also have a similar cycle taking place in what they call your natal horoscope. All of this focus on the nuts and bolts of being fit for purpose, fit to serve, fit to do your duty, and your work ethic are all slowly starting to come together. It's a little bit too soon for you to make your move. You may not probably do that until June or July when the gateway is there, but it doesn't hurt to move in the right direction. So, for example, this week you may hear about a doctor that you like the sound of, or you may hear about a way to lose weight that appeals to you. You might begin to hear about a way of increasing your skill set, that you gain qualifications that will enable you to get a job that you actually want. It's on that level. And perhaps somebody in your profession or your industry or somebody at university is already beginning to talk to you about a direction that looks possible for you to get something bigger or better later on. Whether it's news of a scholarship or whether it's news of a possible vacancy with a rival company, keep your ears to the ground this week. You have been going through Mars in Cancer, of course, which lays a bit of groundwork, and you may not see the entire benefits for a few more weeks yet, but this is one of those weeks when it's a really good idea to lay the foundations. Pisces. The internet and its rivals, be they fanzines or the town crier or a library book suggests a twist in the story this week. You could say another revolution inside the revolution that you've already been going on with. So you've had this since 2018, and it may have been with the media itself or with the internet as a whole, whether you're into TikTok or not. You can't really avoid it on this cycle, which they call Uranus in Taurus in your third house. In your birth chart, you also have Jupiter in Gemini in your third house. So it's the same story told twice. And if you're one of those Pisces people who do have Gemini factors, then this is really personal. A huge amount now revolves around how you're getting through to people online, how you're being heard and read, and how you're also handling the media if it has anything to do with your career. On the most basic level, this is also about your voice. It's about the way that you find the words. It's about the way that you front up to a microphone or the telephone. And it's all in sharp focus this week because you're being asked to do things very differently. Uranus in Taurus is always about inventing a new way to communicate when it passes through your third house. And given that you have until July for this cycle to stop, it tends to speed up towards the end and intensify. In fact, between now and the end of May, you will have made a real sign-off decision about the way that you are going to handle, for example, the web or even education or academia. It's very much about artificial intelligence and AI. That is the definition of this transit, and how you respond to that and what you're going to do about it. It will have a long-term impact on you that may not be known at the moment, because between July 2025, way past the year 2030, the whole world is going through this major cycle called Uranus in Gemini, when the means of communication goes through one transformation after another. So even though this is only 7 days in your life, and you may or may not be aware of AI, it's certainly aware of you, and it will be brought to your attention sooner or later. There are other ways to be heard or read, as you are discovering, and what you are being given at the moment is an extremely interesting experimental new way to get your message across to people. It may be the last thing that you had ever thought of, but it's on your radar this week, and it may be exhilarating, is not too strong a word for you, to try it. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch up with you next week.